fundamental questions about human life and the universe. Throughout history, people have anguished over these fundamental questions. This is because no one has fully understood the root principle, the blueprint, by which humanity and the universe were originally created. To approach this topic properly, it is not enough for us to simply examine the resultant reality, the world that we can measure externally. The proper way to address this, the fundamental question, is that of the causal reality. Problems concerning human life and the universe cannot be solved without first understanding the nature of God. So section 1 is the dual characteristics of God and the created universe. To begin with, we have to ask, how can we know the divine nature of the invisible God? As you know, there are some who deny God's existence based on the fact that we can't see him, can't touch him, can't encounter him physically, and can't measure. But this in itself is not legitimate, because there are many things in our life that we cannot see, and yet we understand their existence because we see their result. Gravity, for example. We can't see gravity working, but we know what happens as a result. And so by observing the effect, we understand the cause and understand the law of gravity. Similarly, my mind. Now, you can't see my mind, but I hope you'll give me the benefit of the doubt that I have one, because I'm expressing my thoughts, feelings, passion, ideas in the way that it's coming out of my physical body. So again, you see the effect and you understand the invisible cause. So it's not legitimate to deny God's existence simply because we can't measure, see, touch, or experience with our physical senses. In fact, by definition, if we're seeking to understand the first cause of the created world, the world that exists in time and space, then would that cause, the world that's defined by time and space, would that cause be within time or be the origin of time itself? Would that cause be within space, or would space be within God? Therefore, I think you know the answer. Therefore, we say that God is infinite, not finite, beyond space. It doesn't simply mean that God is everywhere. It actually means that God is not defined by a specific location within the limited realm of space. And we say God is eternal. That doesn't just mean that God is always here for all time, but beyond time, without being defined by a beginning point and an end point within the limited realm of time, which is a facet of the visible world. So how can we then know the divine nature of the invisible God? Well, one way to fathom God's deity is by observing the universe that he created. Just as we come to know the character of an artist through his works, let's look more closely. So we can understand the nature of God by observing the diverse things of the creation. For example, in the plays of Shakespeare, we find a diversity of topics, but common themes that run throughout these plays. The struggle between men and women, the battle between good and evil, the imagery of light versus dark. Now, these themes are consistently running through all of the plays and tell us something about the nature of the author. And if we find recurrent themes that are expressed in every single form of life, from simple to complex, will it not tell us something about the author of life? Likewise, look at the paintings by Van Gogh. You look at 10 paintings, you could recognize the characteristic style of the artist, even though the subject matter is different, because the style reflects the artist's passion, emotion, and inner nature. So just as we can understand Van Gogh by his paintings, or Shakespeare by his writings, we can understand something about the creator, the cause, by looking at the world he created, the visible effect. Therefore, St. Paul wrote in Romans 1:20, ever since the creation of the world, his invisible nature, namely his eternal power, his deity, his godlike nature, has been clearly perceived in the things that have been made. So let's look first then at the common elements in the natural world. We'll begin by pointing out these elements that are found universally in all things. Every entity, first of all, possesses the dual characteristics of yang and yin, or as we would say in the West, positivity and negativity. More fundamentally, however, every entity also possesses another set of dual characteristics, that of outer form and inner quality. Now, the visible outer form resembles the invisible inner quality. The inner quality is called internal nature, while the shape or structure is called our external form. Now, when we say that the inner and outer aspect is more fundamental, let's look at human beings. Before you are a man or a woman, you are more fundamentally human. And our human personality differentiates us from animals, plants, or any other living thing. Human personality arises from the inner nature, our thoughts, feelings, character, conscience, and how we express that in our visible form. So masculinity and femininity are attributes or expressions of human personality. And of course, every man, every woman has elements of both. A man is not all masculine, a woman is not all feminine. These are two essences that are harmonized within each. For this reason, we can tell a lot about a person by reading their face or their body language and how they sit or express themselves, or even being able to evaluate things in their hand or the lumps on their head or how their body expresses itself, because the body expresses the inner nature of the mind. So the internal nature and external form together constitute dual characteristics. Now let's look at every form of life in the universe in general. Let's look more closely at this. When we go to the most simple forms of life, particles, here on your left. Particles exist as either positive, negative, or neutral because they have both elements within them. They make an electronic magnetic relationship to form the basis of atoms. Atoms then form an electrochemical relationship by sharing an electron with another atom to form the basis of molecules. Molecules form electrochemical relationships to form the basis of matter. Matter arises, and we see in the plant kingdom the dual characteristics of stamen and pistil, or sporophyte, gametophyte. Coming up to animal life, we find that all animals express masculinity, male and female. Even animals that reproduce asexually have both aspects within one body. Even cells, which reproduce by splitting, dividing through mitosis. That process is initiated by the give and take relationship of positive and negative elements within the nucleus. And then we come, of course, to human beings who have masculine and feminine as the foundation of our existence and reproduction and life. So we can see in every form of life, from simple to complex, this expression of the dual characteristics of masculinity and femininity, or positivity and negativity. Two equally valuable yet complementary aspects that allow for the existence and life of each being. Now, when we consider, again, from the other set of dual characteristics, character and form, when we look at energy in its most fundamental level, Einstein, in his theory of relativity, showed us that energy cannot be created or destroyed. It has always been here, but it can change its state, and energy is the basis of matter. However, energy doesn't act at random, out of chaos, but the development of life is the process of energy becoming more ordered, more directed, more organized and developed. So energy seems to act according to a lawful and principled nature. There's some inherent directive aspect that governs how life develops in the universe. When we look at matter, which is composed of energy, once again, we see in the laws of chemistry and physics that each of the elements in the periodic table acts and reacts according to its unique nature. Now, when we see these atoms and molecules come together and forming higher forms of life, such as plants. Plants act also according to a lawful, directive element within them. For example, the roots will always grow toward the water. The leaves will always follow the sun. Yet we can't cut open a plant, pull out the law, and now the plant is going to be unclear and undirected. The plant's mind, or its lawful nature, is inherent within the nature of the plant. Likewise, animals. Let's consider closely. Likewise, animals are governed by their animal mind, which is primarily based upon instinct. And human beings have all of these elements. Human beings have all of these elements, and yet we also have a deeper aspect of our mind. We have self-awareness. We have a moral capacity to evaluate good and evil. We recognize the moral law and are conscious of our relationship with the larger universe. Our conscience is the basis of the human mind. So once again, from simple to complex, we see that there is a consistent pattern that every single entity exists with these two sets of dual characteristics. Now let's consider the relationship between God's internal nature and external form and God's original masculinity and femininity. God's original internal nature and original external form each contain the expressions or attributes of original masculinity and original femininity. Similarly, when we look at human beings, we can understand that within our mind there are masculine and feminine natures, such as initiating and dominating and guiding versus nurturing and listening and reflecting, etc. Also, in our physical selves, there are masculine and feminine attributes. Within God, therefore, original yang and original yin, original masculinity and femininity are attributes of his original nature and his original external form. Now, within the first cause, God's original internal nature must contain the essences of all the law, principle, plant, inner natures of everything in the universe. And God's original external form must contain the essence of all the matter in the universe, which is itself energy. Likewise, within the Creator, there must be the essence of all the masculine natures in the universe, as well as all the feminine natures in the universe. Now, the masculinity and femininity within the Creator is not some strange or foreign concept, but actually, in the Bible, in Genesis 1:27, it is stated clearly, God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him, male and female. He created them. So, man is not just males, but man is male and female in the image of God. Well, let's stay here. So, to summarize, we can say that God is the subject and the harmonious union of these natures of inner and outer, inner nature and external form. Likewise, God is the harmonious union of masculinity and femininity, which are manifestations or attributes of the qualities of his character and form, respectively. Now, God stands as the subject partner toward the universe, having the qualities of internal nature and masculinity or subjectivity in relationship with the universe, which responds to God and has the more external aspect or is feminine in response to God. This is the only reason we can justify calling God He or calling God our Father. Because while containing both masculine and feminine natures, the position that God takes is the initiating, subject, and internal position, or the masculine position in relationship to the universe. Now, the relationship between God and the universe can be summarized, therefore, thusly. God is the invisible subject partner, and the universe as a whole is an object to God, an object partner. According to the principle of creation, God's dual characteristics, manifest themselves in the universe either symbolically or in image as individual embodiments of truth, which constitute the universe. In other words, God expresses himself in his image and likeness, human beings, or symbolically in the rest of the natural world. Let me explain. Every existing being is created reflecting the nature of God with character and form manifested masculine and feminine. These two sets of dual characteristics. This is universal, all forms of life. It's for that reason that when we want to understand our own structure and function in biology class, we will cut open a frog or some other animal to analyze the systems that are more simple versions of what has developed into us, because life develops according to this consistent principle. Now, when we say human beings are in image and the rest of the natural world are symbolic in nature, please consider this. When a hyena laughs, he hasn't just heard a joke. You've heard of a laughing hyena, but he's not laughing at something that's funny, nor does he understand something being funny. Or more specific, but only symbolizes that element that we can relate to. Another good example would be if you would see a graceful swan gliding through the water, extending its neck like a ballet dancer, next to an ugly duckling, wah, 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 going back and forth. Now, externally, one looks graceful and with repose and calm and beauty, while the other has a different external expression. But in fact, inside them, they are governed by the same instinctive desire 24 hours a day to find food. The swan is not actually being graceful, thinking gracefully, etc., but symbolizes that fact. In another sense, when we look at the winter sky, in winter when the trees are barren, when the sky has become gray, when the cold winds blow, there's a feeling of desolation and loneliness and reflection and depth that's evoked within ourselves as human beings. But the trees aren't lonely. The sky isn't sad. The natural world is only symbolically reflecting these qualities. But you and I as human beings, we feel them. We understand them. We can connect to them. That's why our relationship with the divine nature of our Creator is one where we can pray. We can reflect on these things. We can respond and relate to the nature of God. Let's say one final word about God's nature. What can we say about his inner nature? Well, the Bible tells us that God is a righteous God, a loving God, a long-suffering God, a patient God, etc., etc. But by looking at the textbook of the universe, we can also understand the nature of the Creator by the world that he has made. What is it that allowed chaos to become cosmos? The foundation for this cosmos is that everything has order. There's order. Why is there order? Because everything follows law. And behind these laws are purpose, value, and productivity. So there's principle behind these laws. Order, law, and principle is the foundation for the cosmos. As life arises, we see higher qualities of beauty, truth, and goodness. When we come to the animal world, we see love. But not just the instinctual love that we find in animals. When we come to the human form of life, we find the spiritual capacity to be bonded even after our loved ones have long passed away. The spiritual capacity of heart and love. And when we consider the laws of the universe, they aren't voted on periodically. They are eternal, unchanging, and absolute. Likewise, the true definition of beauty, truth, or goodness is that which is eternally true and universally true. And also the love we seek has the quality of being lasting and eternal. So when we look at the universe, we can recognize the expression of the nature of its Creator, a God of order, law, and principle, beauty, truth, and goodness, love and heart, and a God who is eternal, unchanging, unique, and absolute. Now, let's consider